Hi everybody, welcome back to Professor Drew's lab. I know it's been a while, but I need you to know I've been in the lab with the pen and the pad, trying to answer all your questions. You have so many. Starting us off, it's going to be some Discord questions. Grammar Paladin, you asked us about contests. Do they exist? Will we see them? They do exist. We might see them if one or more of the players has an interest in participating in them down the line. So far, they just haven't really been to a place that had a contest hall. You also asked, wild Pokemon seem so very strong. Why? The honest answer to that one is die rolls. The infamous Mareep incident will go down in history as like the time when the players at the table hated me the most because the Mareep just wanted to live and ran, and it's just die rolls. As for why they, why are they so strong? In the terms of the Shuckle. Shuckle I had an idea for, and that was the first time we had tested it, and it was like a 2-hour fight, and it was maybe half dead, and I realized that, maybe giving that to a player might just kind of reduce the need for them to have any other Pokemon or to even have team members traveling with them. So I do ramp up the encounters and then scale them back if the Pokemon are caught. Yes, it's kind of cheating, but I gotta worry about balancing long term, so giving them something that beefy is kind of dangerous. Lucas, you asked, how do water Pokemon work? Do they need to be in water like a fish would? The answer is yes and no. Some water Pokemon do need to be in water to breathe. Others are more like semi-aquatic, where they do better in water, but they can function on land. Good example of that would be like a Magikarp. Needs to be in water. It's a fish. But a Psyduck could function on land, but would probably do a little better in water. D-Swag, you asked about players training to learn new skills. Absolutely, yeah. If they showed an interest in something, or they came to me on the side or in a session and said, hey, I really want to learn how to do like X thing, even if it wasn't a skill that's on their character sheet, absolutely, they could do that. I like the idea that the world is alive and the players can adapt to it. So, 100%, I'm all about it. You asked if ghost Pokemon are the ghosts of Pokemon, or if they are actual ghosts, as in like they are their own thing. So like, would a Ghastly just be like its own unique Pokemon, or did it used to be something else? That depends who you ask. A lot of people in the world will have their own theories about where the ghost Pokemon come from, why they're floating around. Are they, the spirits of something that's no longer with us? Just depends who you ask. And then you also asked, what Pokemon would I be if I was in the campaign? 100% I would be a Wooper. I love Wooper. He is the best. We're going to bounce around a little bit here. Ernie, you asked if Team Rocket is the only villain, or if there is another kind of terrorist group in the Laris region. The only thing I will say on that is there are many organizations and they all have different goals. Don't want to get too much into those. Kev Star, you asked, how is a Pokemon determined to be shiny, and would I have allowed a shiny starter? Shiny Pokemon are mostly determined through rolls, but if one of the players had come up to me at the beginning of the campaign and said, hey, I really want to have a shiny Pokemon, if they could give me like a decent reason for it and maybe have like a story beat for why it's shiny, absolutely. 100%. All about it. Moving on, Jab Warrior. You asked, how deep do you go into Pokemon lore for encounter and location building? The answer may surprise you. I don't really go all that deep into the Pokemon lore for encounter building. Very occasionally I'll take a little tidbit from something, but On the whole, I'm running this campaign the same way I run most of my 5e games, where I'm looking through the monster manual, aka Pokedex, looking for something that fits the needs of the encounter I want to build, and I just plug them right in there and make it work. You also asked, how does Pokemon breeding work, and would there be variants based on parent Pokemon? The example given was like if you had an Eevee and a Growlithe, would the baby be like an Eevee with Growlithe-like traits? You hit the nail pretty much on the head right there. Because we're not just popping 2 Pokemon in a daycare and riding your bike for umpteen gabillion hours hatching eggs, the idea for the baby Pokemon would be, yeah, you could absolutely make like some kind of variants, but the flip side to that is the breeding pair needs to kind of make sense. So like an Eevee and a Growlithe, they're the same basic like design, they're both small dogs, it would work. I know there's some weird egg group things where like a Wailord can mate with other things, and that's just strange, and I didn't really want to get into that too much, so I kind of elected to not. Back to D-Swag, you asked a very interesting question. You said, is there a Pokemon you would hate to have in the campaign? Most of the legendaries. I'm not a huge fan of like if one of the players just went out and caught like a legendary. They have like a Zapdos on their team now. How do you balance that? Like, I know it's a huge part of the games, but the way I'm looking at the legendaries for the purposes of the campaign is like they are serving a purpose. There's like Palkia and Dialga, and they are the keepers of space and time. Like, if you just capture them and all of a sudden they're not watching over space and time, things are going to get a little screwy. So I don't really want to use the legendaries, but if I were to ever employ one, it would likely be the case that they are either very difficult or impossible to catch, just to avoid that whole kind of can of worms. Nick, you asked, are we going to see a Professor Drew and the Crew Q&A session? Yeah, absolutely. We love that idea. So we will be taking your questions for that video in the Discord for the next couple weeks, and then when we get enough compiled, we're all gonna sit around and answer all those questions, and it won't just be me talking at you. That'll be the time to ask, like, how did everyone pick their starters is a big question that's on everybody's minds, and that's something that I can't answer for them because I just let them go. So any of your questions like that, go ahead and pop those in the Discord if you're there. If you're not already in the Discord, do check out the Patreon link down below and get in on that conversation. Moving forward, we have some YouTube comments as well. Magiciantronic, you asked, why do the players not have any kind of technology like a Pokedex or the Pokegear? I like to surprise the players with unique encounters and things, and it felt like a bad idea to give them a talking encyclopedia that would just explain to them anything they could possibly want to know. And it also gets rid of the frustration if they just pull out the Pokedex on something they've never seen before, and I don't want to necessarily tell them what it is yet, because I don't want to ruin the surprise, and then the Pokedex just becomes this useless block that they have in their hands. As for why there's no Pokegear, I don't think the world is like ready for that. The technology's not really there. They still use mail pidgeys to deliver letters to each other. So letters are still the main form of communication. They don't really have like a cell phone. They can't just pick it up and call somebody. You also asked if I have any recommendations for a player new to role-playing games. I have two different pieces of advice, because one of them sounds really easy but is hard to follow, and it's don't be afraid to just go for it and dive into your character. If you're nervous or anxious about playing like any kind of tabletop RPG, if it's an option, start playing with friends in a very safe and enclosed space with people that you know, and then just kind of when you start to get more comfortable, don't be afraid to make a fool of yourself. I do it for like 3 hours at a time during the sessions. But if your character is, has like a weird voice or a trait or something that you're bringing to the table and your character doesn't necessarily need to have, let's say you give them like a super bizarre voice, after a while that's not weird, that's just your character. Perfect example, Bentley's doing a voice. He's super uncomfortable with that. He's like, he told me, he goes, I'm really not good with voices. And I said, just go for it. I don't care. No one cares. We're all friends. Yeah, he got a couple weird looks 2 or 3 times, and then it just became Bentley. So don't be afraid to commit to something that you're not great at, because that's how you get better. So don't be afraid to dive in and try something different. That's the whole point of a tabletop role-playing game. Bookworm, you asked us a couple questions, but can only answer just one. Can Pokemon or people take feats? As of right now, I don't have any plans to use feats. I like the ability score improvements for the players, and the Pokemon kind of get feats in the form of their moves as they level up and train and learn new things. And I like when the players kind of use their little toolkit in a unique way to solve a problem in a way that I wouldn't necessarily have thought about, rather than them just going, oh, I have this feat that lets me get around this encounter you've designed. I like the players to be a little more creative and feel like they're actually solving problems. The final question I will answer today. Are we going to build Pokemon again? Yes, we are. The last episode was just really, really long, so we didn't want to tack on like a 5-minute Pokemon build to a 20-minute video. You guys didn't want to sit around and watch me do that. But today, I have a special treat for you. We are going to build a Beldum for you. This Beldum will be just first level. I believe the Beldum in question for the Discord is for like a starter Pokemon. Beldum's abilities are kind of strange. He's got clear body and I think it's like light metal, where he like have his weight. So I just didn't look at that one because that one seems kind of silly. I guess you could work with like carrying capacity. If you had to carry Beldum, he would be like 200 pounds, which is just a little egregious if you're playing children. So I will be working with the clear body ability, where Beldum cannot have its stats lowered. The base that I'm working with for the D&D Beldum would be that Beldum's attacks can't be resisted, and you cannot have your damage reduced by an opponent's abilities or typing. So like if you use takedown on a rock type or something, it hits normally, it's not resisted. Because it's kind of tricky because there's not really ways to reduce damage very frequently or like have your defense drop. But if there was a case like that, Beldum would probably ignore it. Beldum only has one move, and it's takedown. He has that until he evolves. So I would give that probably a pretty healthy bonus to hit, maybe like a 3 or a 4, despite the fact that he's just a little baby. He's a level 1 Beldum. I would have it do somewhere in the vicinity of like 2d6 damage, depending on what the power level of your game would be. And then obviously takedown does have recoil, but you don't want to punish the player if that's their only move. So maybe make it a d4 at most in recoil. I might even bump it down to just like you take 1 damage back. Back in the beginning, Koa had a move that was kind of similar to this. It was Thrash, where he could increment the damage die of his tackle, but he would take damage in return to do it. So I might kind of steal that and have that be the way takedown works for Beldum. Beldum's almost like a pseudo-legendary, so I would give it a pretty decent hit die. I would do like a d10, maybe a d12. Let's see, if you do that, it's got pretty decent stats all around. The defense and special defense obviously are the heavy hitters. It's got pretty decent HP, hence the d10 or d12 hit die. I would give it a rather healthy AC of like 14. Strength and Constitution, I'd probably put right up there with the AC at 14, so it's got some decent bonuses to hit and to its HP. Mental stats, so intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. I would do a decent bonus to intelligence and wisdom, probably like 12s, maybe 13s in those. And then charisma, probably a +0 because they don't really talk, so it's kind of hard for them to be convincing or lie to you or deceive you if it's just kind of like a floating metal arm. Again, feel free to disagree with me on that mark. You can give the charisma whatever you feel is necessary. That's just what I'm rolling with for now. But to compensate for that high AC, that pretty hefty bonus to hit, I would give it probably like an 8 in dexterity because it is, a 200-pound floating metal arm. It's probably not all that dexterous, and that gives your DM the option to, if your AC is substantially higher than the rest of your friends, to kind of come at you with like a dex save to take some damage to kind of keep you in the fight so that it's not just I roll to hit you and miss. So that is how I would build a Beldam. Again, that toolkit is very limited, but I might look into talking with the player that wants the Beldam, seeing if they wanted to maybe create their own move or maybe their own ability and make it kind of a unique Beldam, because having just takedown for a long time might get kind of stale. But that's how I would build a Beldam. Thank you guys for watching this episode of Professor Drew's Lab. Keep firing away with those questions, and we will see you in the next one. In the meantime, though, check out the links in the description for the Patreon if you'd like to join the discussion in the Discord. If you're not there already, that is where we pull a majority of the questions now. Doesn't mean we're going to ignore the YouTube comments, but feel free to check that out if you'd like. There is also the option for the post-show where you can check out myself and the players talking about the kind of after-action report after every session. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you later. Farewell. Good job. Boom!